pick and roll with Aaliyah Boston. I was confused. How Aaliyah Boston, you got $6 million. You didn't score in the first half. And I'm like, what is going on? But the fact of the matter is, Aaliyah Boston is as affected as Caitlin Clark, because you've decided to take her away from the basket because you're so concerned with taking the ball out of Caitlin Clark's hands and making Aaliyah Boston a hub, playing point center. All of this stuff, none of this stuff makes...
Something inside the Indiana Fever may have just exploded. And if what's being said is even partially true, this is no longer a basketball story. This is a full-scale WNBA scandal. Because one explosive accusation has just ripped through the sports world like a grenade. What if Caitlin Clark was never being developed? What if she was being deliberately controlled? Jason Whitlock didn't hold back. He erupted with a claim so inflammatory, so politically radioactive, and so emotionally charged that fans instantly split into warring camps. Was the Fever front office actually building around the most marketable player in women's basketball history, or quietly designing a system to make sure she never became bigger than the league itself?
Think about that.
The logo threes that made arenas shake?
Gone.
The electric pace that turned Iowa games into national events? Muted. The chemistry that made Caitlin Clark and Aaliyah Boston look like a future dynasty? Disrupted. And now fans are asking the question nobody inside the organization wants to answer. Was this incompetence or sabotage? Because behind the coaching decisions, behind the awkward press conferences, behind the strange rotations and visible frustration, whispers of something darker are growing. And if this story goes where some believe it's heading, the Indiana Fever may be staring at the most explosive internal controversy the WNBA has seen in years. Caitlin Clark did not arrive in the WNBA as a normal rookie. She arrived like a commercial earthquake. Before she ever played a single professional possession, the pressure had already become unbearable. Sold-out arenas, national television obsession, merchandise flying off shelves, opposing franchises moving games into bigger venues just to handle demand, sports networks treating her appearances like playoff events, casual fans who had never watched a single WNBA game suddenly showing up because one player made women's basketball feel like must-watch entertainment. That kind of arrival changes everything. Because when one player becomes bigger than the normal rhythm of a league, emotions get complicated fast. Excitement turns into expectation. Expectation turns into pressure. Pressure turns into resentment. And resentment creates dangerous storylines. Inside Indiana, the plan looked simple on paper. Pair Caitlin Clark with Aaliyah Boston. Build a dynamic inside-out core. Create a new era. Boston already had credibility. Former #1 pick. Proven talent. Franchise building block. Calm presence.
Interior dominance.
The perfect counterpart to Clark's chaos-driven offensive brilliance. On paper, it looked unstoppable. But basketball is never just about talent. It's about ego, identity,
Control.
and who gets to shape the future. Because Caitlin Clark didn't just bring basketball attention, she brought cultural disruption. Suddenly, every conversation around the Fever became louder. Every game felt politically charged. Every debate became emotional. Some saw her as the league's biggest opportunity. Others saw the overwhelming spotlight as destabilizing. That's where the emotional fractures began. Fans wanted freedom. They wanted logo threes,
Fast breaks.
deep-range madness, wild creativity. The exact version of Caitlin Clark they fell in love with at Iowa. But professional organizations often think differently. Structure, discipline, system control, role definition. That creates friction immediately when your superstar thrives through instinctive chaos. And then came the public pressure from every direction. Analysts comparing her to generational legends. Critics questioning whether the hype was excessive. Rival fan bases attacking every bad game. Social media turning every facial expression into breaking news. Even ordinary bench moments became conspiracy evidence. One stare meant tension. One timeout conversation meant conflict. One missed shot became symbolic failure. That's what happens when a player becomes more than a player. She becomes a cultural lightning rod. And the Emotional history got even messier because Caitlin Clark's fan base was unlike anything the WNBA had seen. Loyal, aggressive, protective, emotionally invested, hyper-online. Every criticism triggered war. Every controversy escalated instantly. That changed how every organizational decision was perceived. A rotation adjustment wasn't tactical. It was disrespect. An offensive change wasn't experimentation. It was suppression. A cold press conference wasn't professionalism. It was betrayal. And once fans emotionally lock into that framework, every future decision gets interpreted through suspicion. Meanwhile, expectations inside Indiana kept rising. Because pairing Clark with Kelsey Mitchell, Aaliyah Boston, and a franchise hungry for relevance should have created immediate excitement. Instead, every inconsistency felt magnified. And then louder voices entered the conversation. Not random internet users, national commentators, big media personalities, people with platforms large enough to turn emotional fan frustration into mainstream controversy. That's when the temperature changed. Because once accusations stop living in fan comment sections and start entering national discourse, organizations lose narrative control. And what happened next didn't just question basketball decisions. It introduced a far more explosive possibility. What if fans weren't simply watching bad coaching? What if they believed they were watching intentional sabotage in real time? That was the moment everything crossed a dangerous line. Because criticizing a coach is one thing. Questioning offensive philosophy is another. But accusing an organization of deliberately holding back its biggest superstar? That is an entirely different level of scandal. And that's exactly where this story detonated. The emotional spark came from a basketball complaint that sounded simple on the surface. Why does the offense look so different? Fans kept asking the same question over and over. Where is the pick-and-roll chemistry? Why does Aaliyah Boston sometimes look disconnected from the exact interior dominance that made her so dangerous? Why does Caitlin Clark, one of the most aggressive offensive creators in basketball, sometimes look like she's being asked to play a version of herself that feels smaller? Those questions were already simmering. Then Jason Whitlock poured gasoline on all of it. Not with subtle criticism, with explosion-level accusation. The argument wasn't that Indiana was making mistakes. The argument was that they were making intentional choices that fundamentally diminished the most exciting qualities of Caitlin Clark's game. That changed everything. Because now fans weren't debating strategy. They were debating motive. And motive is where controversy becomes chaos. Was the offense designed to balance team dynamics? Or was it designed to reduce Caitlin's dominance? Was Aaliyah Boston's role evolving naturally? Or was system engineering creating unnatural constraints? Was this normal adaptation or calculated suppression? That first shocking twist is what made this story viral. Because once intent enters the narrative, ordinary coaching decisions become suspicious. Then came the emotional evidence fans latched onto.
Clip compilation.
Side-by-side Iowa comparisons. Highlight breakdowns showing the pace difference. Posts comparing old Caitlin to current Caitlin. The emotional storyline became devastating. This doesn't even look like the same player. That phrase spread fast. And emotionally, it hit hard. Because fans weren't just mourning losing games. They felt like they were losing the version of Caitlin Clark they fell in love with. That transformed basketball frustration into emotional betrayal. And then the mainstream outrage widened. National voices amplified it. Reaction channels framed it as organizational dysfunction. Comment sections exploded with accusations that the Fever didn't understand what they had. But then came the twist nobody expected. The controversy stopped being just about Caitlin. Now Aaliyah Boston got pulled into the fire. That made the story even more combustible. Because instead of framing this as Clark versus the system, fans started asking whether the system was hurting multiple stars. That's how a personal controversy becomes a franchise controversy. Because if more than one cornerstone player looks misused, then this isn't a superstar adjustment problem. It's structural failure. And structural failure creates executive pressure. Suddenly, the front office wasn't background noise anymore. Now people were asking hard questions. Who approved this philosophy? Who shaped this vision? Who believed this was the right basketball identity? And if the answers pointed higher than the bench, the implications became explosive. Because a coaching problem can be fixed. An organizational philosophy problem that can tear a franchise apart. But just when fans thought this was about basketball incompetence, a far uglier theory started spreading. And once that theory escaped into the public, this stopped being about basketball strategy altogether. That's when the controversy took a turn from basketball dysfunction into something far more explosive. Because once emotional fans start believing poor decisions are intentional, the next step is almost always conspiracy. And that's exactly what happened. The conversation stopped being about spacing, stopped being about pick-and-roll timing, stopped being about shot selection. Now the emotional theory spreading across reaction channels, fan pages, and social media battlegrounds was darker. What if this wasn't just bad basketball? What if powerful people inside the ecosystem wanted Caitlin Clark's influence controlled? That idea detonated instantly. Because Caitlin Clark is not just an athlete. She is an audience magnet, a television event, a cultural flashpoint, a business force. And when someone becomes that big, people start attaching larger motives to every decision around them. Then came the second major twist. The controversy expanded beyond the Indiana fever. Now people were dragging the entire WNBA into the emotional firestorm. Suddenly, every prior controversy got pulled back into evidence. Old headlines, player comments, social media arguments, league tensions, fan clashes. Everything was reinterpreted through a new emotional lens. And that's when the story became radioactive. Because once fans believe there's a larger ecosystem issue, trust collapses fast. The emotional narrative became, this isn't one coach. This isn't one bad system. This is bigger. That kind of framing spreads like wildfire because it gives every frustrated fan a bigger villain. And bigger villains create stronger emotional engagement. Then came the fan identity explosion. Supporters no longer felt like passive viewers. They felt personally rejected. That changed everything. Because once the audience emotionally inserts themselves into the conflict, outrage multiplies. Fans began interpreting attendance fluctuations, energy shifts, media discourse, and organizational messaging as signs of alienation. The feeling wasn't just disappointment. It was betrayal. And betrayal drives obsession. Then another dangerous angle emerged, locker room tension. No confirmed leak. No official statement. But emotional speculation doesn't need proof to gain momentum. People began asking, are teammates frustrated by the spotlight? Is there jealousy? Is chemistry being strained? Is the organization trying to maintain balance by limiting one star's influence? Those questions alone were enough to create chaos. Because once jealousy enters a sports narrative, every interaction becomes suspicious. A missed pass becomes personal. A cold expression becomes resentment. A coaching correction becomes targeted control. That's how emotional narratives spiral. And then came the business pressure angle. That made everything even worse. Because if the biggest attraction in women's basketball becomes the center of public controversy, executives start paying attention. Ratings discussion, ticket chatter, national media coverage, public perception. Now the emotional argument wasn't just, is Caitlin being used correctly? Now it became, is the league risking its biggest commercial asset? That is a terrifying question for leadership. Because if enough people believe the answer is yes, pressure starts moving upward. And that's when the most dangerous possibility of all entered the conversation. What if this controversy eventually forces Caitlin Clark herself into a decision? Not frustration, not silence, an actual move, a trade demand, a public breaking point, a power shift. And if that possibility becomes real, the Indiana fever wouldn't just have a controversy. They'd have a full-blown franchise crisis, with the entire sports world watching. And that's when the emotional explosion became impossible to contain. Because once controversy escapes basketball circles and enters mainstream public conversation, the damage changes shape. It becomes bigger, messier, more personal, and far harder to control. Social media didn't react. It detonated. Every clip became evidence. Every quote became ammunition. Every facial expression was dissected like courtroom footage. Fan pages transformed into digital war zones. Reaction creators uploaded non-stop emergency-style breakdowns. Comment sections became full-scale civil wars. Not between rival teams. Between people who believed Caitlin Clark was being sabotaged and people who believed the outrage itself had become the real problem. There was no middle ground anymore. Pick a side. That was the emotional climate. Team Caitlin. Team organization. And anyone asking for nuance got swallowed alive. Then mainstream sports media added oxygen. That changed everything. Because online outrage feels loud. National discussion makes it legitimate. Once bigger names started debating whether Indiana had fundamentally mishandled its most important star, fan anger turned into validation. Now frustrated viewers didn't feel emotional. They felt correct. That is when backlash becomes dangerous. Because validated outrage escalates faster. And the emotional fallout didn't stop with coaching. Now players became collateral damage. Aaliyah Boston discussions turned toxic. Kelsey Mitchell debates became emotionally charged. Every basketball conversation became identity warfare. Who was helping Caitlin? Who was hurting her? Who deserved blame? Who was protecting the system? That pressure is brutal inside a locker room. Because even if players say nothing publicly, they feel it. The internet projects narratives onto every interaction. One missed connection becomes chemistry issues. One emotional timeout becomes teammate tension. One awkward bench moment becomes proof. That kind of atmosphere can poison perception fast. And then came the emotional human cost. Because beneath the screaming headlines was Caitlin Clark herself. A player under suffocating national scrutiny. Every possession judged. Every bad shooting night dissected. Every body language moment interpreted as secret distress. That kind of pressure can crush even elite competitors. Then came league politics. The most combustible air. Because every Caitlin controversy now exists inside a broader emotional ecosystem. Media narratives. Fan tribalism. Star comparisons. Angel Reese debates. Future stars like Paige Buecher's entering discussion. League leadership scrutiny. Everything gets pulled into the vortex. That makes every single controversy exponentially bigger. And while fans fought publicly, executives quietly watched. That's the part people forget. Organizations monitor perception. Sponsors monitor sentiment. Networks monitor engagement. Leadership monitors risk. And once a controversy becomes emotionally expensive, internal conversations change. The question is no longer, is this just internet noise? The question becomes, can this damage the franchise? That is when panic begins. Because reputational pressure creates urgency. Urgency creates mistakes. And mistakes create even bigger headlines. But just when it seemed like this story had already reached maximum chaos, one terrifying question started creeping into the conversation. What if this isn't the breaking point? What if this is only the setup for something much bigger, something that could permanently change Caitlin Clark's future in Indiana? And this is where the story becomes truly dangerous. Because outrage is survivable. Bad press can be managed. Social media chaos eventually finds a new target. But there is one thing franchises fear more than headlines, more than criticism, more than fan anger: a superstar reaching her limit. That's the final twist. Because the biggest question hanging over Indiana right now is no longer whether Caitlin Clark is being used correctly. It's whether this entire situation is slowly pushing the most important player in the WNBA toward a breaking point nobody can reverse. Because history tells us something brutal. Generational stars do not stay quiet forever when they believe the environment around them is limiting them. At first, they adjust. Then they stay professional. Then they absorb pressure. Then one day something snaps. And when it does, entire organizations shake. That's why the most terrifying possibility in this entire controversy isn't bad coaching. It isn't fan outrage. It isn't social media warfare. It's leverage. Because Caitlin Clark is not just a player. She is power. Commercial power. Cultural power. League-moving power. And if she ever chooses to use that power, everything changes. Think about the emotional implications. If frustration grows, if losses pile up, if public scrutiny intensifies, if visible tension keeps surfacing, then internal patience starts collapsing. Not just hers. Everyone's. Ownership feels pressure. Executives feel pressure. Coaches feel pressure. Teammates feel pressure. That's when ordinary friction becomes institutional crisis. And then the comparison nobody in Indiana wants to hear starts resurfacing. Magic Johnson, a young superstar who recognized a system mismatch and eventually became powerful enough to influence organizational direction. Now, no situation is identical, but emotionally, the comparison is explosive. Because once fans start believing Caitlin Clark has the right to reshape her environment, expectations change instantly. Now, silence doesn't look patient. It looks temporary. Now, professionalism doesn't look calm. It looks strategic. And that creates a chilling possibility. What if she's not powerless? What if she's simply waiting? Waiting for leverage. Waiting for timing. Waiting for the moment when speaking changes everything. That possibility terrifies organizations because once a generational star publicly loses trust, rebuilding that relationship becomes nearly impossible. And then comes the darkest scenario. What if the real damage isn't what happened already? What if the true breaking point hasn't happened yet? One more awkward post-game quote. One more visible sideline frustration. One more ugly losing streak. One more emotionally chaotic national segment. That might be all it takes. Because once the narrative becomes Caitlin Clark versus Indiana, the franchise loses control of the story completely. And if that day comes, this won't just be remembered as a coaching controversy. It will be remembered as the moment the Indiana Fever failed the most valuable star women's basketball has ever produced. But maybe the most chilling question of all is this. What if the people inside the building already know that and are running out of time to stop it? If you thought this was just another WNBA controversy, think again, because what happens next could change the future of Caitlin Clark, the Indiana Fever, and maybe the entire league. Because now the pressure is unbearable. The next game is not just a game. It's a test. One strange rotation. One emotional sideline moment. One awkward press conference answer. One frustrating loss. And this entire firestorm explodes all over again. So now I want your honest prediction. Was Jason Whitlock exposing something bigger than basketball? Is the Indiana Fever actually mishandling the biggest star in women's basketball? Or has this entire controversy become an emotional overreaction that social media has pushed completely out of control? Drop your most explosive take in the comments right now. No safe answers. No neutral takes.
Pick your side.
And if you want high-drama WNBA breakdowns, emotional deep dives, locker room tension analysis, fan backlash stories, and the viral basketball controversies everyone will be arguing about tomorrow, hit that subscribe button right now and turn notifications on immediately. Because this Caitlin Clark story, it is nowhere near finished. And if the next chapter gets even uglier, which honestly feels very possible, you do not want to miss the second this entire situation erupts again.